Before we get started, I have an important question to ask you, and I need you to be perfectly honest. You ready to be honest? This is serious now. All right. Who's played dress up when they were a kid? You okay, a few hands there. Okay. I'm not talking about the safe dress up. I'm talking full commitment. You didn't just close your eyes and click your heels and think, oh, this is what I want to be. But you were fully committed to it. You put on the outfit. You embodied it. Maybe it was a firefighter. Maybe it was an attorney. Maybe it was a doctor. Whatever it was, that's what you wanted to be. I saw a few hands. And so, yes, this is a safe space. I wanted to have those things as well. And I am going to share a little bit more about myself since you let me know this is going to be a safe environment to share. So, welcome to Built for Purpose, Trapped in Performance. This is a picture of me when I was little. I love to dress up. And in this photo, I am dressed up as a grandmother. Yes, I dressed up. I wanted to be a grandmother. My grandmother made me feel so special. I didn't have just one grandmother, I had many grandmothers. My grandmother on my mom's side, my father's side, my great grandmother. And all of them made me feel special, like I was the most important person in the world. And that's what I wanted to grow up to be. That was one of the things. In addition to that, I wanted to be a dancer, a model, an actress, even an ice skater. And I was fortunate and blessed to have a mother who indulged, who encouraged me to explore every version I wanted to of being myself. When I wanted to be a dancer, I didn't just get to dress up, I got a chance to take the classes as a model. Yeah, there was a modeling school, and I went to that too. I had that experience. When I wanted to be an actor, I got a chance to go to classes and to be in plays. Now, the ice skating, that was a different thing. After one, two, three mini falls on the ice, I made a decision myself that I was not going to be Dorothy Hamill. Hopefully, some of you remember who Dorothy Hamill was. So, when we think about our childhood, when we were playing dress up, we weren't confused. We were exploring the possibilities, the different versions of who we could actually become. We didn't overthink it. There was no judgment, there was no shame, and we didn't have a plan for what that. We just knew we just went for it. And we weren't confused. And so when you think about fast forwarding from that, another part sets in where we start to get exposed to things from the well meaning adults in our lives, perhaps to, well, maybe you should be a doctor, a lawyer, attorney. And so we start that shift away from things that we explored, versions of ourselves that we were passionate about, that we wanted to. So we stop showing up as ourselves. So think about this. If you stopped going for it, if you stopped saying the real thing, and you stopped showing up fully as yourself, and you chose to perform a safer version of yourself, go ahead and say me or raise your digital hand. Let's see who's out there. Does that resonate with you? If I'm not in your seat yet, what about this? You smiled. Oh, I see some hands. Thank you, Timothy. Anyone else that resonated with? Awesome. I see Julia. Thank you. What about this question? You smile and you nod in agreement, but you really didn't agree. Or perhaps you said, yeah, it's okay, but it really wasn't. Or perhaps you softened your message to make it safer. If that's you, raise your digital hand. I see you, Zoraida. Thank you. Here's the part that I want you to know about purpose. When we think about it, we often think about it as this big, elaborate thing. The sky is going to open up and there is going to be this big message when the sky parts and it'll say, Renee, this is what you were meant to do. It sounds funny, but I actually believe that for a big part of my life. I was waiting to hear the voice. I was thinking, oh, wait, I have to wait. I don't want to miss the message of who I'm supposed to be, what I'm meant to do. And purpose does not work like that. Purpose is not one thing, it's many things. It shows up differently in different points of our lives. When we were 5, it looked like dress up. That now that we're 16, maybe when you were 16, you started to be told that it was unrealistic and to start thinking differently. And then maybe today, that's when you're softening the message before it comes out of your mouth. You're filtering it. Today, we're going to look at and find out what's in the background, what's happening and running in the background. What does it look like? I'm going to give you a framework that you can use in real time that's going to help you get back to yourself. Not the managed version, the real version. I'm Renee Jackson Smith, the founder of Soar to Win and an executive coach. I work with leaders and I help them to stop performing and show up fully as they are with influence, confidence, and presence. So when you think about what is happening, how did we get here? We got here in the beginning as children. We were born curious. Curiosity was a part of our DNA when we came into the world. We were unapologetically curious. Some of the ways that we expressed it were the 50 or maybe hundreds of why questions that we asked of the adults in our lives. Perhaps you have children of your own, or maybe you know some young children. I have children and they're grown now, but I remember that moment. And think back to that moment when you were a child. You didn't hesitate. When you wanted to be something, you said it with your full chest, even if it was a dinosaur. It might have sounded crazy to the adults or someone else, but as a child, you went for it. You were persistent. You believed with your whole heart. There was no shame. There was no filtering, no second guessing. You went for it. So as children, we are completely unfiltered and curious. And then when those moments come in where we start to shed that, we start to back away from who we were designed to be. And we start to think versus explore. We are committed to, ah, exploration is no longer part of who I am, what I need to do. I need to execute because wondering or exploring is no longer rewarded. It's viewed as something negative. It's often punished. If you're not specific, if you don't know what you want to do, that's not okay. And so we force ourselves, we start to shed those pieces of us that were naturally curious and naturally embody who we are. And so when we get to be adolescents and we start to get in our teenage years, now we're starting to fall into line. We're starting to shift. We're starting to audit ourselves before we speak because that's in our background, that's in our mind. And by adulthood, judgment becomes our default. We start performing before we start leading. And then we start managing the perception before we express the truth. Your parents weren't wrong. I'm a parent myself. I know I've got parents out there. You weren't wrong. You were just afraid, right? We want the best for our children. We don't want them to fail. We don't want them to struggle. We could, we put a wrap a bubble around them. I know I would, but I wouldn't keep them safe because that would be out of my control. But we had a map. There was this map that was placed in our hands. It was passed down from generation to generation. And a lot of times that map didn't include the possibilities of what we could potentially become. Did anybody else get that roadmap passed down to you? See a few hands out there. That roadmap. And with that roadmap, we did the best we could. But when we got that roadmap, we also got the box that we needed to fit into. And we didn't know it. And here's what happened quietly in the background. When you got your box, and curiosity started to leave. You probably heard things like, stop daydreaming and focus. Next, exploration left. That's not practical. You need to do something that makes sense, that can make you some money. 3, space. You don't have time for that. You need to grow up and start thinking differently. So curiosity, exploration, and space, those are things that we had that make us uniquely who we were when we were children. And here's what I want you to hear about purpose. Purpose is not loud. It doesn't shout. It's not going to show up on the billboard, on your very nicely built vision board, or even your 5-year strategic plan. Purpose lives in what you stop doing. And when we stop doing those things, it keeps us in that box. So now our purpose lives in the curiosity that you stopped following, the exploration that you talk yourself out of, and the space that you never give yourself. That's where your purpose is now. I love movies. And if you were here for the beginning kickoff of the conference, there were some movies. I'm inspired by movies. I'm one of those movie geeks that looks at them and I'm looking for the lessons. What can I learn from it? And one of my favorites is Ratatouille. It's yeah, I know it's a child, more of a child movie, but it just makes me smile when I think about it. Remy, who's a rat. I don't like rats normally, but in this particular movie, I did. And so Remy, he is built to cook. In his nose, his hands, every fiber of his being, he is meant to cook. But there's something that the world says it's not for you. He gets that message, it's not for you. And so Remy chooses to shrink himself. Yeah, he's already small, but he chooses to make himself smaller and he goes to hiding in the walls. Sound familiar? I see some folks who've seen the message, the movie, Tanisha. Thank you. Absolutely. And some of you have exactly the same feeling. Think about you did everything that was passed down to you in that map. You did everything that you were supposed to in that box. So let's take a moment to celebrate that. You did the thing. The goals that you had, the goals, the things that you have done were absolutely freaking amazing. So celebrate yourself. Celebrate all that you've accomplished because it is great. And that's something you should be proud of. Don't let anybody take that from you. And also know that you might still be waiting on what it feels like to be yourself. I felt that doing all the things that I'm supposed to do or I think I'm supposed to do. I'm working my box. That's not a you problem. It's what happens when purpose gets boxed in. Purpose doesn't shout, it shows up in the quiet. Yes, absolutely, Zoraida. It sure does. It's a whisper. And if we don't lean in and if we don't give ourselves space, we might miss it. So, how does it show up? What does it look like? Well, there's a gap between who you are and how it shows up. It's almost like that thought we mentioned at the beginning, where you have it in your brain, but somewhere between your mouth, it changes. And that's what happens with ourselves. We are fully who we are. We know who we are, but somehow, sometimes it shows up differently. And there's a gap. So, what does that gap actually look like? It looks like the three things on the screen. It looks like over explaining. Over explaining. You take 5 sentences to explain your thought and when you could have said it in one sentence. Can I get an amen to that? Over explaining. Absolutely. Amen. Yes. Yes. You can relate to that. The second way that shows up is hesitating. Have you ever walked into a room or at a conversation and you were waiting for the perfect moment? You were waiting for it to show up with a bow nicely wrapped, or even for somebody to give you some space or an invitation to express your thought. Did it happen? Probably not. I've sat in that space more times than I would care to admit. And you leave feeling like, I should have said that. I should have. And so you operate in that the shoulds space. And the third one is adjusting. You're the chameleon. You can walk into any space and you look at the faces, you look at the energy, And you decide in that moment that who you are needs to shift or change to be in the room that you are in. So you see, it doesn't show up loud. It shows up in three subtle ways. And these are in those moments that matter when you really need to show up as yourself. So, a quick poll, go ahead and put in the chat which one of these shows up for you. Is it number one, over explaining, two, hesitating, or maybe three, adjusting? Which one of these shows up the most for you? Awesome. Seeing a lot of twos. Thank you. The reality is, most of us most likely rotate between these, depending on the day, the room, or even who's sitting across from us. And here's the wild part about that. This is not happening because you don't know who you are. You absolutely know who you are. It's happening because somewhere along the line, somewhere along the way, you learned that who you are needs to be managed before you enter the room. Am I in your seat? If I'm not in your seat, I know I'm all up in mine. I'm just going to say that. As I think about another movie moment, I told you I love movies, y'all. And this one, The Lion King. If you haven't seen it by now, what are you waiting for? Simba, a young lion. Simba knows who he is. He's told who he is, but he chooses to leave, to perform a carefree life and perform as a wanderer, just living his best life away, doing him. Because he knows when he goes back, it means being seen, it means possibly being judged. So Simba didn't have an issue with who he was. He didn't have an issue with his purpose. He chose and he decided that he was more comfortable performing than showing up with who he is. Any Simbas in here? I promised you a framework. Let's get back to yourself. What does it feel like to get back to yourself? I actually had the opportunity to be a part of a retreat last weekend, and it was a small group. And I gave myself permission not to be in control, but to focus on being in the moment. And it was so refreshing. I remember something the instructor said to me: stop worrying about doing, doing it perfect. Just be. And y'all, control freak. Oh my gosh, I was comfortable. I said, well, let me try something different. Not worry about the time, but just be an experience. And I felt amazing. I was able to share without apology. I said what I said and felt good to release, to express without putting conditions on myself or how I show up. This is me. Take it or leave it. It was an empowering moment. You probably are experiencing some of the glow. I'm still feeling it. It was almost like going back. into childhood and being able to revisit the version that disappeared and saying, welcome home. Here we are. Thus, the orange fringe. I was channeling and I was feeling my inner child. So, with this framework I'm going to give you, this is how we get back to being yourself. Getting back to yourself is not a confidence problem when you have that moment. It's not a personality problem, but it's giving yourself permission to stop performing and start being. Thank you. You loving my orange vibes. The first one is real. The first one is resist. Resist the impulse to rush. Many times when we don't feel comfortable, there is a tendency to rush. We want to get it out of the way. We don't want to take up space. My challenge to you is breathe. Take a deep breath. Let it out. Enjoy that moment of silence. You are allowed to take up space. If you didn't hear me, I'm going to say it again. You are allowed to take up space. The second one is enter as yourself. Now, enter as yourself. Ask yourself this question. What would I say if I wasn't concerned about how it would land? What would I say if I wasn't worried about how it would land? That's entering as yourself. And let's be clear. I'm not saying go in with your full self and say anything that you want. We all know that some of us are very expressive. It's expressing yourself. Be authentic to that self, but we also want to make sure that we are taking care of others in that process. And that A, answer from that place, not the managed version of yourself, the real version. When you think about that real version, think about your younger self. Maybe it was 5, maybe it was 6. And last, let it land. Now, this is saying it, not louder, more clear, more true. Don't over explain it. Don't walk it back. Trust that what leaves your mouth is going to land. Trust yourself. You have everything that you need. Allow it to step out of that box. Power shift is not becoming someone new. All the things we talked about are things that you already have. It's about creating space to remember who you were before the world got loud and be willing to let that person show up. So I'd like for you to try it now. I've given 3 scenarios, and I'd like for you to take a look at them. Take about 90 seconds or so. Read one that feels appropriate for you. And you're going to respond to it in 2 ways. One, what does the performed version look like? And then what is the way that you truly feel? Take a moment. If you've got paper, feel free to write it down or visualize what that looks like when you say it. Even if you want to put it in the chat, feel free to do that as well. Okay. I'd love to hear anyone who is brave and who'd love to share your scenario and what you came up with.
We have 14 seconds. And so I just want to say thank you.
Okay.
It was
Awesome.
very informative. I appreciate everything.